Welcome to Living the Spiral. This is a place to slow down, take a breath, and listen to the rhythms moving through your life. Here we explore astrology, human design, the I Ching, and elemental ancestral wheels of the year from cultures around the world. These are old maps and living languages that help us sense where we are in time, what is asking to unfold, and how we belong to something far larger than any single moment. In each episode, we trace patterns in the sky and in the body. We weave myth with lived experience, intuition with practice, and the personal with the collective. Living the Spiral is about learning how to move with change instead of pushing against it. About meeting transitions with curiosity, integrating polarities, and remembering that every season carries its own powerful wisdom. When you begin to listen to the cycles, life starts to feel more connected, more meaningful, and more alive. I'm your host, Allison Dale, and this is Living the Spiral podcast. Hey everybody, welcome to Living the Spiral. I'm here to talk to you today about the full moon in Leo that we have coming up this Sunday, February 1st. And I'm also going to talk to you a little bit about Imbolc, which is the cross-quarter day that lies between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. And so it's one of the holy days of the pagan wheel of the year that we have coming up here to coincide with the full moon in Leo. And so we'll talk about that and how Imbolc will be kind of celebrated on Sunday and also continue into the week ahead. We are currently in a deep moment in the collective, and I think that goes without saying, deeply transformative, deeply powerful. Over the past week, we have had all of the inner planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, and the sun and the moon all pass over Pluto in Aquarius. And so if you're feeling a little bit of like you've seen the underworld, like a light has been shined down into the basement or deeper down into the canyons and chasms of things that you thought you might not ever see, welcome to the club, welcome to the party. We are in deep territory. And Pluto in Aquarius is this transit where Pluto is here for about 20 years. Pluto just entered Aquarius last year and will be in Aquarius for 20 years. Pluto's currently in the first gate of Aquarius, which is gate 41, the gate of beginnings, the start codon in the genetic DNA sequence, the gate of contractions, like the contractions that happen in the womb before a new world is birthed. And so Pluto there at the threshold to the sign of Aquarius is where all of these planets have just passed through. And so if you're feeling tired, it's really, I'm right there with you. I barely have it in me to be recording this right now, but I want to, because despite the amount of information that's flowing around out there, just the fervor of chaos, I do think it's important to stick to our rhythms and stick to the contributions and the creativity that we're bringing to the world right now. I think that that is the best thing that anyone can do, is to not get derailed by the chaos, because you have a light shining in your heart. We all do. And the more we can feed that light, the more we have the chance to connect with others who are shining their light as well and create a network, create a web that can beat the demons. And of course, I'm referring to K-pop Demon Hunters. If you haven't seen it, it's kind of a constant in my life because my daughter is singing these songs from K-pop Demon Hunters on the regular, on the way into school and on the way back from school and all the errands that we run. We're singing these songs about essentially confronting our shame and not being apathetic and connecting together despite our shame and despite the fact that we don't think that we're doing enough, and connecting our heart lights together and spreading basically a web to prevent the underworld from coming up to the above world. Because the underworld has a place. Pluto, Hades has a place, but that place is not to seep out into the world above. And so that is what we're doing right now. We are figuring out how to shine our lights. And I come at this podcast today, coming into this studio, kind of just feeling tired. You can probably hear it in my voice. the month of January for me has been such just a deep catonic dive into the underworld in a health way, just getting sick in multiple different ways and having dental surgery and having just weird stuff happening with my health. And it's allowed me to definitely uh, go deep into my mind. And I think I said this in last episode too. It's allowed me to make a lot of connections, read a lot of books, and do a lot of scrolling as well. And I feel really like inspired in my mind. And also, I think I've hit a point of oversaturation and I'm having a harder time than usual giving myself the space to just be, to just sit, to just lie there, to just take a bath, to just take a walk without a podcast in one ear. And I think that with so much to keep track of in this world right now, that is where a lot of us are. We're constantly feeling like we need to be keeping up to date with whatever new information is coming through. And I think that that's a strategy by the powers that be. It's called Flood the Zone. It's this strategy that Steve Bannon, Trump's advisor in his first term, came up with, which was basically just to continue to stay in the news media, continue to stay in the minds of people and put so much stuff out there, so many headlines that you can't keep track of one thing for longer than a few minutes. And we're already kind of have this dopamine saturation with social media where we have been kind of programmed through that and through our own addictive qualities to have a very short attention span, right? So for any of you who are listening to this and it ends up being longer than 15 minutes, like, thank you. I appreciate the long form, even if you're doing something else while you're listening to it. I am guilty of that as well. But I will say that I think the flooding the zone, it's hard to combat that kind of battle strategy. It's really hard to, you know, go against a flood. You kind of have to figure out how to swim within it. And sometimes that's taking a life raft, and sometimes that's swimming to the shore and holding on, and sometimes that's just like breathing deeply and floating on your back and letting everything kind of swirl around you without having to hold on to the different pieces of debris that are coming by. And, for me, like I've been on my phone and Substack and Instagram and different places and contemplating which to stay on and which to quit and how to go about the social media landscape with being a business owner and marketing, and also for my personal connections with people. Like, how do I stay involved but also not be so flooded by the everythingness so that I'm, continuing to get sick? And I think one thing I've noticed while I've been on these social media apps and just on the internet in general is that what it feels like to me is that everyone is a detective right now. And I started to really notice this during the Luigi time, whenever that was last year, when everyone had a theory and everyone was following the breadcrumbs. And now there's like so many simultaneous stories, and everybody is following them. There's like, you have the face. If you're ever on social media apps like Instagram and TikTok, especially, the way that these videos are created is there's like a talking head in front of a news article that's in the back, and they're like pointing at the headline and then jumping to point to a new headline and then creating a beautifully articulated story with audio and visual, right? To prove a point. And usually that point is kind of just that, like, oh my God, it's like, here's the real secret beneath the secret, and it's all interconnected. And here's my tinfoil hat theory, and all of that kind of stuff. It seems like more and more people are just donning themselves journalists and detectives, which is amazing. I think it's a really amazing part of society, the society that we live in. But it's also, I think, can be a wild goose chase that is purposefully exhausting. And so I won't go too much further down that rabbit hole, but I have noticed that even on Netflix, like, here's me being tinfoil hat person, but even on Netflix, they're kind of promoting James Bond out of nowhere. Just all the James Bond movies are like being highlighted and promoted. and other detective films as well. So kind of like spy and detective, like whodunit, figure it out, get to the bottom of this kind of stuff. And to me, that feels a little fishy. It feels a little like, wow, okay, maybe this is just a coincidence. But I did watch one of the Knives Out detective movies with Daniel Craig the other night with my partner when I had a rare moment of just watching a movie. And it was, of course, it's fun to become a detective and to like figure out who did it and to have your theories and all of that. And that movie was done very well in that regard. But sometimes that can just be, you know, it can be the wild goose chase. It's kind of like where are we going with this perpetual figuring out if we're not giving ourselves time to rest and to retreat and to integrate all of the sound bites and videos that we've consumed on a daily basis, whether that's from TV, if you're a boomer out there still watching TV, hello. And if you're a millennial still scrolling your Instagram, hi there. Or if you're Gen Z doing whatever it is that you do to consume media these days that I'm like not cool enough to know about. Hi to all of you. We're all consuming media in different ways. And no matter which way it is, it is very, very important during these times to retreat, to take some privacy, to go inward and to integrate these things. And I'm just saying this for myself because it's reaching that threshold. And especially if you're after a week of Pluto transits where all the planets are hitting Pluto, really important to integrate what you've seen because Pluto is shining a light on the things that have not been seen. And there are riches. I always say this, that Pluto represents the underworld, and the underworld is also where the riches are kept. The riches, the ore, the minerals, the gold are all underground in the muck and the mire. And so you're not going to reach those riches and distill whatever it is that's down beneath unless you take some time to actually know what you're looking at and to integrate and to consolidate. So that's kind of the preamble here. We're just coming out of a week of intense Pluto transits. We still have 5 planets, 4 planets and the sun in the sign of Aquarius where the sun is when the full moon is happening. And so we're still in that Aquarian territory, which is all about revolution. It's all about humanitarian kind of interconnectedness, for better or for worse, how we are all interconnected. And so we're very much in these times where, we're having a preamble to the age of Aquarius, where we are looking at kind of the unity that's possible. Hello, Minnesota. And we're also looking at the problems with deep interconnectedness, with surveillance states and with AI proliferation and everybody being connected through the internet. There's pros and cons and ups and downs to all of the signs and all of the energies in the zodiac. And so having such an emphasis on Aquarius right now, I think we're really seeing the emphasis on the beauty of interconnection and of coming together and creating networks and creating nodes of resistance. And then we're also seeing the shadow sides of Aquarius, which are how, when we're so interconnected and we can't really get off of our phones, for example, and in the meantime, we don't know, what kind of data is being collected on us, that kind of thing. Those are both Aquarian themes. And so there's no like, oh, the age of Aquarius or Aquarius, Pluto and Aquarius is all good or all bad. It's just, is thematic. And so we continue through that with Mars and Venus this week are transiting through gate 49 in Aquarius, which is the gate of revolution. And we have Mars and, wait, did I see? Okay, Mercury and Venus are in gate 49. And then Mars and Pluto are in gate 41, that gate of contraction, gate of new beginnings. And then the sun is in gate 19. And that is known as approach in the I Ching, or the gate of wanting in human design. So all 5 of those are in Aquarius, spanned across 3 different gates within Aquarius. And so we have themes of revolution. We have themes of starting something new, kind of going through the pains of contractions for a new world to be born. And then we also have the theme of wanting and needing to approach things with sensitivity. So that's where we are in the solar realm. And then on the opposite side of the wheel this week for the full moon, we have the full moon in Leo, gate 33, which is known as the gate of retreat or the gate of privacy. And so that really kind of lays the land for the chart of this weekend into next week. We have the full moon really bringing an energy of kind of taking into consideration where we want to approach something with sensitivity, where we want to lean in, where we want to check out our networks, gather, be dependent and interdependent with other beings. And then the moon on the other side of the sky is reflecting back kind of a lion's den energy. It's in Leo season and it's saying, Leos, you should be all about leadership and shining bright and radiating and being on stage. But this particular gate within Leo season is about retreating. It's the time when the lion's been out on Pride's Rock and learning about how his mane shake is affecting the rest of the kingdom. And so he's coming back into the den and saying, like, wait, I need a minute to think about how I'm leading, think about what my role is in all of this. And lions do have dens. They have dark spaces to go back into. And so that's what this moon is really bringing to the forefront, is this need to remember to retreat. I need to remember to take some private moments for integration. And the gift of this gate 33 is mindfulness. And that is a word that we've heard a lot, at least I've heard a lot in the past decade or two. It's been very popular and very common, especially referring to Buddhism, referring to meditation. Mindfulness techniques are just this ability to be able to witness our own selves. And sometimes that's hard to do when we're constantly looking outward for information, we're looking outward for connection, we're moving in more of an approach. When we retreat, it's a time when we can get into a mindful space and almost watch ourselves as a player in the larger game and not be so polarized and attached to what the rest of the players on the game board are doing at any given moment. On the other side of the sky, the gift of the sun is sensitivity, which is the energy of like how you would approach an animal or how you would approach a small child, ideally, or how you would approach another person if you are a sensitive being, which is not to just rush in through the gates into a sacred space, but to take a moment at the threshold and pause and maybe wipe yourself off a little bit, wipe the energetic dust off of yourself, and to take a moment to assess kind of what the situation is before you approach it. And so this juxtaposition between mindfulness in Leo gate 33 and sensitivity in Aquarius gate 19 is really speaking to that through line that is happening between the energies right now, where we have to integrate these polarities, we kind of have to look at what's similar between them. Because at first glance, we have approach and retreat sound like opposites. They are opposites. One is about going backwards into the lion's den, and one is about moving forward. But it's just about how we do this. Like, retreat doesn't have to be running away, running for the hills and covering your head with a bag. And approach doesn't have to be like pick up your sword and charge the gates kind of energy either. That's what they can look like in a different form. Retreat can look like avoidance, and approach can look like needing and wanting something so much that it becomes kind of either aggressive or codependent. And so if we can move beyond those polarities into this gift level of these energies, and during any full moon, we're going to want to look at the two sides of the wheel and see how we can integrate those energies, because a full moon is always on the opposite side of the wheel as the sun. And so we have this beautiful contemplation this week that I invite you to sit with about how to integrate mindfulness, which is an inner process of kind of an inner coherence and an inner witnessing that might require some space, and how we can mix that and kind of swirl it together with the gift of approach, the gift of wanting, which is sensitivity. And see how we can take that mindfulness that we gain from witnessing ourselves as one of the players within the game. And we can then look at a situation that we need to interact with. And we can enter that space, whether it's a physical space or a digital space. We can kind of pause at the threshold, even though we're approaching, even though we're moving in. We're going to pause and kind of look around the room and say, all right, who looks like they're, you know, needing something from me, who looks like they might want to be left alone. It's kind of like when you approach a wild animal and you want it to come close to you. You're going to, or a dog on the street, you want to hold your hand out, hold your palm out open. You don't want to have a closed fist. You don't want your fist to be facing down because there might be a miscommunication about what you're trying to do. So keeping your palm open, keeping a slow cadence, allowing the animal or person or being or energy to approach you first and take a little sniff before you then are able to kind of pet it and scratch its belly and get in there. So I think that combination of not retreating and then getting lost in like, oh, I'm all alone, but retreating and being like, I can see that I am a part of all of it. And I can see that clearly now because I'm alone. And then approaching situations with that mindfulness of moving slow, of pausing at thresholds, of letting people approach you first if that feels like that's what's needed. On the other hand, if it's like a long lost friend you haven't seen in forever that you're seeing inside that room, like by all means, go ahead and rush at them and give them a big hug and meet their energy where it is. But it's about that sensitivity to knowing within each individual that you're approaching how they want to be met and how you can meet them. And that will create beautiful, cohesive frameworks of a substrate and infrastructure that we can live within. One other thing I want to say about gate 33, where the full moon is, just to backtrack a little bit, the full moon is at uh, 13 degrees of Leo, 13 degrees and 2 minutes of Leo, and the sun is at 13 degrees and 2 minutes of Aquarius. And so we're kind of almost midway through Aquarius season and having this kind of middle energy full moon in Leo. And the integration between them is really powerful. And it might show up in your life in a way that this week or during this full moon on Sunday, you might want a little bit more space, a little bit more privacy. If you've been following a lot of accounts, if you've been on the text chains with your friends, just being like, WTF, what's going on? How do we do this? Picking up on other people's energies and being available for other people's energies. I've been noticing that feels like that's been alive. And Aquarius season is a beautiful time for networking, and we need that right now. But I would give yourself a little bit of space over the weekend and consider it like a retreat, not a retreat as in like I'm retreating with my tail between my legs, but more so like I'm taking a retreat and going to luxuriate in that spaciousness, which is what we do on retreats. In the gene keys and in the genetic correspondences with the gene keys, gate 33 is a stop codon. And if you were listening last week or a couple weeks ago, I talked about gate 41, where Pluto and Mars currently are, being the start codon, which initiates the human design new year. And so we have one start codon within the wheel of the year, and we have 3 stop codons, and 33 is one of those stop codons, which is pretty interesting. It's the genetic code that tells us a protein to stop being built. And so basically, when we look at gate 33, it's this energy of retreat, but it's also about ending something. Sometimes when we do retreat from where we have been in a kind of continuous flow and a continuous momentum, we can find dignity surrounding an ending, around like what really needs to stop at that moment. And so that setting of boundaries can sometimes only come when we like pull back from what we've been in, the dynamics that we've been in, and we take a beat, we close the book, stop reading, and then think about it, like write a book report. Like, what did I just learn from that whole situation? All of those interactions that I've recently been having with my peers, with my community, with my partner, with my kids, with the world at large, with my sense of reality. I think that there's definitely a time to pause in all of that and have a conversation where you understand the needs of the world. You understand that you have had to have all of the dynamic interactions that you have had, but now it's time to just put a stop to something, some way of being that's not serving you. And for me, to make it less abstract, I think I'm already feeling that energy. And I feel like this full moon will be kind of a completion of this overly hungry intellectual craving for like knowing, figuring it out, researching the history of religion and the history of humanity and the history of the occult. And like I've just been on research mode like crazy, and I'm feeling like it's oversaturated, it's reached its limit for this point in time, and I want to put a stop to that so I can get back into more of a balanced cadence in my life. So yeah, it's the type of full moon. It's the type of full moon where taking a pause is super important. And I'd say on the collective level, the pressure to continue to respond and react is really high right now. And collectively, Gate 19, where the sun is highlighting collective needs like food systems and housing and emotional security and belonging. And the sun shining right there is amplifying this desire to like meet those needs and continue to like figure out a system that's going to work. But then on the other side of the wheel, gate 33, the retreat gate, where the full moon is reminding us that not every response should be immediate, and it definitely shouldn't be reactive. We can acknowledge collectively that a lot of systems are ending and some narratives of how we saw the world are collapsing. People who weren't seeing this before are now starting to see because it's starting to reach them in a new way. And so we're seeing that, some leaders and institutions and ideologies are reaching an expiration point, even if the announcement hasn't been made yet about that, and even if things haven't been made official. Things are reaching a culmination and a conclusion, and enough is enough. And so on the world stage, this full moon could show up as pauses and withdrawals and resignations, data going dark, stories going quiet before a major shift. And it can also show up as public fatigue with the constant exposure and outrage cycles and performative transparency. So all of that, I think we're very aware right now how collectively we are affected by each other. And so the full moon being in the gate of retreat feels like it could be a moment of quiet, of darkness, of like something. And I would say don't rush the next thing because it will inevitably come, as it always does. The wheel keeps on turning. Moving on. So yeah, that's about all I will say about the full moon. I would say when you look at the hexagrams for gates 33 and 19, the full moon and the sun gates, these hexagrams are what make up the gates, what make up the gene keys, what make up the I Ching. They're combinations of two different trigrams that are made up of yin and yang, solid and broken lines. And sometimes just looking at the hexagrams themselves, which I do have on my Substack at livingthespiral.com. I always post for these episodes the human design deck cards that I made. And I do have my human design deck available at my website at hearthandspiral.com, and at humandesigndeck.com is another place to get them. But these cards have the names of the gates, they have the names of the I Ching hexagrams and the I Ching names, they have the body graph centers where these live, the zodiac degrees where they are. It's kind of full picture of this energy. But looking at the hexagrams for gate 19 and gate 33, you can really just see visually wanting versus retreat. The gate of wanting is earth over lake. And so it looks like a kind of two hands open to the sky, connected at the bottom with a lot of openness at the top. Like it's a very receptive kind of energy, a very sensitive type of energy. And then the gate of retreat looks like a cave in a mountain. It is heaven over mountain, the trigrams, which create a solid structure on top and then a couple of broken lines on the bottom. So it looks like a lion's den. It looks like a cave. And I was just noticing that as I'm recording, that sometimes the imagery really shows what the dichotomy is, shows what the vibe of this gate actually is. And so as we move through this weekend and the next week, thinking about the difference between wanting and retreat, the difference between wanting to approach something and change something and move something and receive something, and getting to that place of revelation through mindfulness, through taking space. And one final thing I'll say about gate 19, where the sun is the city is sacrifice. The kind of transcendent level of this energy is sacrifice. And that can come across in a lower frequency as codependence. Like we're in an energy of like being codependent on like having all the answers, being codependent on other people to tell us what's true and what's right, and kind of sacrificing ourselves for that larger picture, sacrificing our own internal energy for that knowledge that we think we're getting by continuing to look outward. But I would say I was listening to the Richard Rudd Gene Keys episode about Gate 19, and he was saying that, sacrifice, when you're sacrificing yourself for another person, is never actually going to serve you. If you're being depleted for another person or for a cause, it doesn't actually serve the greater whole. But what sacrifice in this Siddhic level means for Gate 19 is sacrificing that kind of base instinct, sacrificing the lower impulse to like need to know right now, or need to be connected to something. And you're sacrificing that and choosing a higher path, choosing to make the right decisions and choices for yourself within your own heart. And so I think that sacrifice is something that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Like it kind of feels like sacrifice is necessary now. We can't all continue to have all the things and live as if there's infinite resources and infinite possibility. Like we're having a sobering moment of realizing that we need to make sacrifices for the larger whole. You are a part of the larger web. This is an Aquarius gate after all. Like your node is just as important as other people's nodes. And so taking care of yourself, being sensitive with your own thresholds is just as important here. And that brings me to Imbolc, a holiday that we're celebrating along with the full moon on February 1st. It is the cross-quarter day that's halfway between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. And it's always celebrated on February 1st each year in the Gregorian calendar. But it is also in the astrological calendar, if you're looking at the degrees that are the halfway degrees between the equinox and the solstice, it'll actually be celebrated on Tuesday when the sun reaches 15 degrees of Aquarius. And so I would say that you don't have to be too particular about it. It's a type of thing where you can celebrate it over the course of 3 days, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, to kind of close that span in. But either way, whenever you do choose to celebrate it, whether it's the Gregorian calendar day or the astrological wheel, we are in this season that's right in between winter and spring. And it's in that kind of strange stretch where the world is chilled, it's still wintry outside, there's snow on the ground where I am, and it kind of looks the same as it has, but we can kind of get a sense that the light is shifting and something underneath the ground is reorganizing a little bit. The days have definitely become noticeably longer since the solstice, and the sun is definitely just has a little bit more oomph to it, it feels like. And so in the old Celtic calendar and pagan calendars that make up the wheel of the year, Imbolc is associated with Brigid, who is a Celtic goddess that was later woven into the Christian tradition known as Saint Brigid. And Brigid is the goddess of hearth and home and healing and poetry and smithcraft and kind of the steady inspiration of putting the work in. I would say that, you need to tend to the home, tend to your body for it to heal, tend to metals to craft them into a metal smithing craft. And that is the type of energy that we're bringing to this holiday. And Imbolc is a fire festival, so people light candles and tend their hearths and bless thresholds during this time. Sweep your front stoop. And the ritual focus is on protection and renewal because this is the time of year when you can sense spring's approach, but still get taken out by a surprise snowstorm. And so it's this recognition that something is coming, very similar to that human design New Year energy that we had a couple weeks ago. It's all within this same Aquarius season. It's all within the same threshold, which is this kind of energy. You look at Aquarius symbol, and it's these waves of electricity that look like waves of water, but they're kind of waves of electricity with this sense that there's something pulsing under. And the name Imbolc is a translation from Old Irish that means in the belly. So Imbolc is in the belly. And it's referring to the belly of sheep, of ewes, because it's the time of year when ewes were pregnant in Ireland and Celtic lands, and ewes began lactating around the time of Imbolc. And so that was a seasonal marker that life was preparing to feed what is coming next and that something is stirring beneath the surface. So it's a good time to tend to the soil as well, to make sure that your soil is looking good and looking proper for the seeds to be planted soon and for seeds that are dormant underground to be able to come up. And so Imbolc is, I would say, a very good metaphor for Imbolc when it comes to your personal life is to tend your own soul soil. I saw a video recently on Instagram that was somebody talking about Imbolc being a time of a kind of sobering time when you look out and you see a kind of barren landscape and you have to ask yourself, like, is is that ground fit enough to hold everything that I want to grow in the coming seasons? And so we have this season of, maybe it's not doing a ton of literal work on your soil, but it is doing work on your inner soil, on your soul to say, do I have enough of a matrix, of an infrastructure, of a support web? And this woman, I'm forgetting her name, but I'll post her in the show notes. She's a gardener who operates by the wheel of the year, and I love her account. But she was kind of talking about how soil is made up of three qualities, and one is like the dead matter, the rocks and like the stuff of the soil, and one is the organic matter, like the compost that is being transformed into the soil. And then one is the biological processes, the kind of chemical and biological processes that are creating a dynamic to allow this fusion between the matrix, like the stuff of the soil, and the living matter that's being broken down. And I'm not a soil scientist, but I love this concept, and I love the idea of tending our soil during this time because we're still in winter. We're still in an inward reflective time. This full moon in particular is about going inward and retreating. And so when you're retreating and when you're going into that mindfulness cave, thinking about soil and thinking about the fact that like we need healthy soil to grow anything out of. For anything to flourish, the soil needs to be healthy. And so that is what Imbolc traditionally has been about. Imbolc is also symbolized by milk because of the ewes that begin lactating at this time of year. And so it's that power of nourishment, the power of nourishing ourselves in these moments and weaving things together. There's traditions of Brigid's crosses, which are woven from rushes. And they're kind of these beautiful four-pointed crosses that I participated in an Imbolc ceremony last year and got to weave one for the first time. And it was a beautiful tradition to sit there and do something with your hands, like a handcraft that can connect your mind and your heart and your hands all together. I'd recommend doing something with your hands, like a repetitive kind of action like that, whether it's milking a ewe or a cow, or weaving something or painting a mandala. I feel like something like that around this time to really bring in all of the energy that's been dissipating out into the larger world since the beginning of Aquarius season. Time to kind of call that energy back in, and through a practice that uses your hands in a repetitive motion would be a really beautiful thing to do as part of an Imbolc celebration. And it's also a great time to kind of clean out a drawer. Don't go overboard. We're not in full spring cleaning mode yet, but to pick like one corner of your house that could use a little love and a little attention, and just make that one corner like extra wonderful and feeling really good to be in as winter continues to winter and the surprises of the weather continue to do what they're going to do. So the theme here is, yeah, just about preparing the land, preparing your space, preparing your hands, preparing your heart, preparing all of these things for something to grow. And knowing that, like, the more you tend to that matrix, even if it's just a small plot of land, or even if it's just like a tiny little mandala that you make, or even if it's just a tiny drawer, like your junk drawer in your house that gets nicely organized so you know where to find the tool when the time comes. Any of those things would be a beautiful thing to do over this weekend and this full moon when you're in that retreat mode. So light a hearth too, light a fire if you can. It's time to tend to that flame. Like, spend time with that fire if you can, noticing that like nourishment is required to keep something alit, and clear the clutter, make room for what wants to be born, for the seeds that want to be planted. Don't even think about what the seeds are yet. You don't have to know exactly what's going to grow. You certainly won't know what it is that's going to flourish come springtime and summertime. But it's a time to really like notice that we are moving towards spring. We're halfway there. And so, we won't be in this dark time forever. And so taking the time for home rituals and body rituals and making vows that are grounded in the sober reality that like nothing's growing yet, but there is potential. So that is Imbolc. It's a really beautiful holiday, and I recommend looking into it more, learning about Brigid or Bridget or Saint Brigid, and kind of the different traditional Celtic traditions that happen around this time. It's a really beautiful way to connect to ancestors if you're of Celtic or European descent in general. And yeah, I'd say that there's a lot to do and a lot not to do, right? It's doing the small, repeatable, kind of mundane tasks, I think, that I know for me will bring me back to center after spiraling out. My Hearth and Spiral name of my business really comes through here, as it tends to, and that's why it came to me, I think, was just this idea that there will be moments of connecting to the larger spiral of the like, what's the big picture, what's going on, how do we interconnect with everything? And then there's the moments of saying, enough, I need to come back to my hearth. I need to come back to my heart and tend to what is going to keep me rooted and grounded for the long haul as the world keeps on spiraling. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you so much for being here and listening to this full moon transmission. And I look forward to talking to you again soon for the next new moon in Aquarius. And one announcement, I do have a breathwork session for Aquarius season. Every month I do a workshop where we talk for about an hour about the season at hand and the things that are coming up for us during that season, as well as a little bit of kind of symbolic and archetypical information about the season. And then we go into a 40-minute conscious connected breathwork journey where we bring in themes of the season and really try to ground them into our bodies through the simple power of the breath. So that's happening on the 3rd, on February 3rd at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. And it's on Zoom. And you can register for that at hearthandspiral.com on my website. Just book a session. It'll be right there. And it's also in my Substack at livingthespiral.com. That is an easy way to find all of my podcasts as well as bonus articles that I put out during the off times when I'm not doing these new and full moon transmissions. I will put out some different articles about astrological things, big picture things, small picture things, things that are on my mind or feel relevant to the moment. So I encourage you to sign up to get my Substack in your inbox at livingthespiral.com so you don't miss a beat. And I always do appreciate any likes, hearts, shares, comments, just engagement with this material. If it moved you or resonated with you at all, it helps so much to spread the word and get it out there as it's a labor of love. And I would love to have it reach more people if it moves you. So thank you for your 5-star reviews and your shares and things like that. It's always super appreciated. And just being here and spending this time with me, I'm grateful for you. So thank you. And I will see you next time on Living the Spiral. Bye.